Welcome to the Daily Bread Bible Study, where my best friend Sandy and I are diving deeper into Scripture and sharing the nuggets we find. We hope it blesses you in some way.
Luke chapter 16 is one of the strongest chapters Jesus gives about money and stewardship, divided hearts, spiritual blindness, pride, eternity, and the danger of ignoring God while appearing religious. This chapter is spoken mainly to the Pharisees and the religious leaders who loved status, money, and public honor. Jesus uses uncomfortable parables because he is exposing heart posture, not just behavior. Jesus is traveling toward Jerusalem in the final phase of his ministry, guys. We are coming close to the end, and tension with the Pharisees is growing stronger and stronger by the day. Verses 1 through 13, the unjust steward. So a rich man discovers that his manager is wasting his possessions, and the manager realizes that he is about to lose everything, and he is way too weak for hard labor and too ashamed to beg. So he quickly reduces the debts people owe his master to gain favor with them before he loses his job. And at first, the story sounds confusing because Jesus says the master commended the steward. But Jesus is not praising dishonesty. He's praising the steward's urgency and foresight. The steward understood something, that my future is coming quickly and I need to prepare for it now. Jesus is comparing that urgency to spiritual life. So the main lesson here is people prepare intensely for earthly futures like retirement, careers, influence, and survival and comfort. But many neglect eternal things completely. Jesus is saying, why are worldly people sometimes more intentional about temporary things than believers are about eternal things? That's a very good question. Because everybody does plan for their future here on this earth, trying to live as comfortable as they can. Always planning, always planning. But very rarely do you ever hear anybody trying to plan for eternal things, for spiritual things. That's so true. Okay, now next, make friends by means of unrighteous mammon. The phrase here confuses people, but mammon means wealth and material resources. Jesus is teaching, use earthly resources for external purposes. Things like blessing people, helping others, support God's work, be generous, and invest in things that will outlive money. Now, money itself is not evil, but money reveals loyalty. And Jesus says, whoever is faithful in little will be faithful in much. That is very true. See, small things expose the heart, integrity, honesty, stewardship, humility, and consistency. God watches how people handle money, influence, time, responsibility, and private decisions. Because you cannot serve God and mammon. Jesus does not say that you cannot have money. What he's saying here is you cannot serve both, because eventually one becomes master and the other becomes secondary. Money becomes dangerous when identity depends on it, when security depends on it, and your worth depends on it. Or obedience to God changes because of it. Oh man, we've seen that. I've seen that in people, especially when somebody passes away. Ooh, you see the vultures, they come out. It is horrible to see. Okay, verses 14 through 18, the Pharisees react. So the Pharisees mocked him because, they loved money. That detail matters deeply. They weren't merely disagreeing intellectually. Jesus was exposing what ruled them internally. Jesus exposes their hearts. And Jesus says, what is highly esteemed among men is an abomination in the sight of God. Whew, that is a terrifying statement, because humans often celebrate status, appearance, wealth, power, image, public admiration. But God sees motives. And the Pharisees looked righteous outwardly, but inwardly they wanted recognition, control, admiration, comfort, security. So Jesus is attacking outward religion without inward transformation throughout Luke. And the law and the kingdom, Jesus says the law and prophets were until John the Baptist. So Jesus marked the transition. The kingdom was now being openly announced. The Messiah had arrived and people were pressing into the kingdom. But the Pharisees resisted because Jesus threatened their power structure. Then comes the divorce statement. Jesus briefly mentions divorce and adultery here. Why? Why here? Well, because the Pharisees manipulated God's law for convenience while pretending righteousness, and Jesus exposes selective obedience, strict in public religion and compromised in personal heart matters. So that was being exposed right away. Verses 19 through 31, the rich man and Lazarus. The rich man, Jesus describes, wearing purple clothing, fine linen, luxury, and daily feasting. Must be nice. See, purple dye was extremely expensive. And this man represents self-indulgence, comfort, spiritual blindness, and a lack of care towards suffering. Now, Jesus never says the man was condemned simply for being rich. That's not what he's saying here. The deeper sin was hardened indifference, self-centered living, and ignoring both God and suffering right in front of him. And Lazarus, on the other hand, is poor. He's covered in sores, he's hungry, he's laid out by a gate, and the dogs are licking his wounds. And that symbolized humiliation and uncleanliness. Yet Lazarus has something that the rich man lacks, and that's faith and dependence on God. His name actually means God has helped. Now both men die. Suddenly everything reverses, and the poor man is comforted with Abraham. And the rich man, now he is just being tormented. Jesus repeatedly teaches the kingdom reversal in Luke. The humble are lifted, the proud are brought low, the hungry will be filled, and the self-satisfied are emptied. And the rich man asks for relief. And Abraham warns of an impossible abyss that lies between them, which no one can travel. So it's impossible. There's nothing that can be done for the rich man. And this is Jesus teaching eternity is irreversible. Earthly life matters. What you do here, how you live it, your heart posture, all of that matters deeply. And the condition of the heart now matters to the rich man all of a sudden. And now he wants to care about spiritual things. But this is only after he receives judgment. He says, send Lazarus to warn my brothers. But Abraham replies, well, they have Moses and the prophets, meaning that they already have scripture to help them through it. Then comes one of the strongest lines in the chapter, and scariest, I might say, because he says, if they do not hear Moses and the prophets, neither will they be persuaded if one rises from the dead. Now, this is foreshadowing Jesus himself, because many still rejected him even after the resurrection. Wow. I mean, if the scripture is not going to help you, nothing else will. And we see that throughout all the gospels, because the religious people are seeing miracles and they're seeing things that they haven't seen ever in their whole life. But nothing is helping them see that Jesus is the Messiah. None of it. So chapter 16 hits stewardship, heart loyalty, outward religion, inward truth, eternal perspective, and Jesus keeps redirecting attention from temporary gain to eternal reality. That is chapter 16, you guys. We are coming close to the end of the gospel. It is about to get more and more intense. So if you stuck around to the end, I am very thankful. I hope that these studies are helping you in some type of way. But I will see you guys on the next Bible study. God bless.